Hey yo, what is up? Scramblelock here for AMA number 4. No, number 5. Yes. Lunacy is in the house. Treklock is in the house. What up, guys? Yes, so today's AMA is focused on music. And I decided that the best person to interview would be the person that I live with. That's her right there. It's Ruby Jane, DJ Ruby Jane. She's my special guest for this week's AMA. So we're going to be talking about all things music, all related to locking. You guys get a chance to pick a DJ's brain. I feel that a lot of lockers know about, DJs and battles and locking events, but it's really cool to get a bit of perspective from the DJ side of things. So if you guys have questions, don't be afraid to ask them in the question box down below, and we'll be able to check out or to answer all those questions that you guys might have for Ruby Jane. Where is Ruby Jane? I have to go get her. It's not going to be that hard. I can just switch the camera, because there she is.
Hi. Hope everyone's healthy and safe at home and holding it together to some extent, not eating too many chips.
We are.
Yeah,
We're eating a lot of chips.
Can't say the same for myself.
So this is our setup that we have. We call this the Soul Nest. And this is where you get down. Julie's got a bunch of live videos that she does, or she's been doing throughout the quarantine.
Live streaming.
Yeah, live stream. So she'll give you some information as to where you can hear her for some of the other shows. But while we wait for the questions to come in, guys, don't be afraid to ask questions in the question box. Helps us to get the discussions going today. But in the meantime, why don't you give a little background about where you come from and how you got started into DJing.
Where I come from, I was born and raised in a small town called Elmer, just outside of Ottawa, but on the Quebec side, so the Outaouais. And my first apartment when I moved up from my parents' place was with DJ Zatar and Darsha Hewitt, who is a really established artist out in Germany, and Zatar is like one of Ottawa's reigning DJs. And he had already started DJing, had been playing funk actually, and there wasn't a lot of DJs doing funk at the time. We had a little Thursday night where he'd play often, and eventually we kept having to borrow or rent turntables, and I had some money left over after paying tuition for university, after busting my ass serving on a patio in the Byron Market for the whole summer. And I decided I'm just gonna get the turntables. It'll save us money, and then hey, maybe I'll start DJing, and that's when it all began.
Are these the turntables?
Yeah,
you got?
These are the same turntables. I mean, they're Tech 12s. They're tanks. You can't.
So for people that don't know, Technique is a company that makes records, and the Tech 12 or the Tech 1200s are probably the most popular for DJing equipment.
They're the standard DJ turntables. They're the most solid. They're super easy to repair. I've dropped them downstairs and they were fine. So yeah, they're 20 years old.
So maybe a little bit more about what got you started into DJing. Like, how did you start becoming a DJ?
I was always into music. I used to make mixtapes. I used to give mixtapes to friends. I used to make CDs for road trips and just to create a soundtrack to my life as I was making my way in the world, and it just seemed, it was like a whim. Honestly, Alex was doing it, and I became more and more involved in this night. It was called Culture Thursdays. We did it with a few people, and I just said, let's do it. I already had some vinyl that I picked up over the years, either from my parents' collection or garage sales, and I was really getting into funk. I always was. As a kid, I was really into Motown and, you know, like Diana Ross and the Supremes and Smokey Robinson and Wilson Pickett. I loved all that old timey music because my parents listened to the oldies AM radio station. So that's how it happened.
So for those that don't know, like, we live here in Montreal, and Ottawa is about an hour and a half from Montreal.
An hour and a half to 2 hours.
So, and I'm originally from Toronto, so within that area is like 3 main cities in Canada, and it's a lot of DJs from Montreal, DJs from Ottawa, DJs from Toronto, and I mean the rest of Canada as well. But if you ever come here, you're definitely going to find a lot of DJs. In particular, DJs that inspired you here when you moved to Montreal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, the first people to take me under their wing when I came to the city was DJ Static and Professor Groove from We Funk Radio, and I had already been listening to them for quite a few years before that.
So for those that don't know, We Funk Radio is an online radio station that's been happening since 1996, and these guys feature weekly performance. They have weekly playlists of shows dating back all the way to 1996. So anybody looking for music for locking or dance of any kind, you got to check out wefunkradio.com. Sorry guys, we are back, and hopefully no more sound issues, but we're in the process of talking with DJ Ruby Jane. Here she is, yay! So we were talking about some of the DJs that influenced you here in Montreal.
Yeah, another monthly party that I would go to religiously when I first moved to the city was The Goods, and that was Andy Williams and Scott C. And it was just the first time I was able to go out and hear a lot, like an open format night that did like everything from Afrobeat, original Afrobeat, funk, disco, hip hop, broken beat, and part of that sort of circle was DJ Cobal, who's like goes deep into the funk in the city, has an incredible record collection. And then like the following generation, so to speak, you had Voyage Fantastique, and that's where they really sort of honed in on the boogie. And prior to that as well, we had Frank Boulevard and Majest and Don Godfather D, who were doing hip hop and boogie, house, like the most funkiest disco house, and you know, like 80s and 90s dance R&B. So like New Jack Swing and R&B. In the sense that it was like boogie, but like more mid-tempo, almost like roller boogie, you know, not so much disco, more mid-tempo, more P-funk, like, so yeah.
Cool. Guys, if you have questions for Ruby Jane, now's the chance to ask them. You know, for the dancers out here, you guys have a chance to ask and talk to a DJ and get some perspective from that angle. So, you know, in the questions box, feel free to ask questions. We want to see you guys having conversation, you know, and I'm going to keep asking questions because I have some, but in the meantime, please don't hesitate to ask some questions to Ruby Jane. Let me ask you, how did you get connected into the locking scene, right, and becoming to DJ through locking events?
Through you, obviously. I had already done some b-boy battles, not very well. When I first started out, like, it takes experience. In fact, I find that the best battle DJs are ones who actually have been dancers previously, because they understand what needs to be played. For sure. And it was so great to be to move into the funk styles realm, because yes, b-boying is fun, but it isn't as creative. It's very like just breaks oriented, whereas with locking and whacking and all styles, you can play a whole song. You don't have to worry about just playing the breaks, you know. So and there's a, you know, like I've DJed b-boy battles too, where the crowd was very, very open, but it did definitely move away from like hearing a whole song and just like these produced breaks for b-boys. Yeah.
So what locking battles have you DJ'd at?
Oh man. Well, I mean, I DJ'd Family Affair, which is when a whacker and a locker has been paired up. I've played. Where have I DJ'd? On Point. Unlock the Funk, on the one in LA. What are some other ones? Bust a Move. How could I forget Bust a Move? I've played the after party at Crystallize last year, hopefully to go back at some point in the future. You might remember some more Scramble that it's not coming to mind. I've played at House of Paint in Ottawa, but that was for b-boys, and also just like for the festival for the people who were there to hang out.
You did a locking battle in Japan too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I forget the name of the event, but
it wasn't Strong Style, was it?
No.
Yes,
it was in
Sapporo.
Hokkaido. Yeah.
In Sapporo, yeah, that was great.
Okay.
I also DJed in All Styles in Bangkok, which is really fun.
Yes.
Was it All Styles or did I just do whacking? I can't remember.
Okay, so we got a question that came in.
Okay.
Somebody wants to know, what's the main difference between funk and disco, talking about musical structure?
Okay.
And maybe you can demonstrate it with sounds if you got some.
Funk tends to have more breaks. It tends to be more polyrhythmic. Actually, let me not put it that way. Disco can be very polyrhythmic, but it's definitely very 4/4 and usually faster. It often has an orchestral feel to it, so lots of strings and keys. Funk is raw, and it also is an older genre. Disco came out of funk. Funk started in the 50s and 60s, coming out of jazz and blues, and then developed into boogie, late 70s rare groove and disco. So that would be the difference in my mind. Like,
What do you mean by 4/4?
4/4 means like a very steady, simple beat. So like house music, whereas funk tends to have more like hi-hat breaks in between the beats.
You want to give an example?
Okay. So these are two very fast songs. Okay, this is to me. I'm gonna play James Brown. This is like a reprise of one of his songs. Hang on, sorry, I have to find the track.
Yeah. See a lot of people joining in. What up, Miko? Funky Miko's in the house. Julie's just getting some tracks set up to demonstrate what 4/4 means, or the difference between funk and disco.
I will say though that disco to me is a form of funk. I would call this original breaks, original funk, the James Brown era, Syl Johnson, even Parliament, the P-Funk era, I would call that original funk, but P-Funk is kind of like the bridge. George Clinton, Zapp and Roger, it was like a bridge between original funk into disco. So that's how I would describe it. And let me say another thing, I am no musical historian, so what I'm saying might be wrong. I have done some research, but this is the way I do things. So.
Mama got a brand new bang.
So this track is fast. It's 120 BPM.
What does BPM mean?
Beats per minute. So it's fast. Hear all those little hi-hats in there? This is funk. The horns, that's very funk. So it's definitely rawer and more live. A lot of disco was recorded, produced a different way. A lot of it was like, rather than musicians sort of playing together in a sound room, often it was like individual pieces of the song and recorded separately. So it has a more polished sound. Okay, let me find a disco track. So I feel like a main difference between like a raw or funk sound and a disco sound is that you're gonna get more strings, like violins, compared to horns. That's a sort of element that a profile that you'll hear between the two. So the beat is more steady. It's not as like syncopated. It's more 4/4. Boom, boom. You're gonna have a little bit of congas, but there's not as much hi-hats.
You can hear that string.
Yep. But you hear that horn, that da-da-da-da. When I hear that horn, I think that it would work great for a locking battle. You know? And
For sure.
also when you hear a horn like that in a more raw or funk song, I still feel that whackers could hit those beats. So that's what I look for in a song when I'm trying to decide on what I'm going to play for a battle.
Cool. Good. That was a good question. Kai Star is in the house. What up, Kai Star? You're the one that suggested we interview a DJ, so you better have some questions for her. In the meantime, we do have another question coming in. How do you see playing music for a battle versus for a party? Which aspects are different and which aspects are the same?
Oh, man. Playing music for a battle requires way more preparation and strategy. You gotta know your tracks in the sense that you have to quickly decide where you want to start the track, because sometimes, especially like with boogie and disco, you can have an 8-minute edit of a song, and then the like hype part of the song only begins like halfway through, and sometimes you need to start it there. You gotta move quickly because the battle starts and stops. You gotta focus. You're working when you're doing a battle. It's not, I mean, it's fun because you get to like interact with a crowd in a different way, but you're working. You have to respond very quickly. You gotta pay attention to the countdown. You gotta pay attention to the dancers. Sometimes you have to know the dancers to strategize about what song you want to play. You know, I definitely try not to play songs that I know that they love too much because I don't want to give them an advantage. But also, I think, you know, sometimes I'm like, this battle, this track would work amazingly. So it involves way more strategizing. Whereas for a crowd, DJing for a crowd of people in a after party or in a club, it's more for yourself. You're taking them on a journey. You also are watching them to see what journey they're ending up in. So you're responding to their energy, but it's really, you know, an intuitive feeling. It really is like building an energy and taking it to a lower, taking it down a bit just to bring them back up again. And it really is a journey. Whereas a battle, it's like boom, boom, boom. You got to strategize. You have to be prepared. You have to research your music. You can't just sort of go in and use your intuition and decide what you're going to play at the last second.
Very interesting. So you played a lot of parties.
Yeah.
And do you prefer battles or parties?
I prefer parties, but I like them both. I mean, it definitely gives you a sense of fulfillment when you DJ a battle because you are collaborating with other artists in a way you don't for just a dance floor. I love DJing for whackers because they're very creative. And yes, they have foundation, but they tend to have more freedom to step outside of that foundation and do crazy shit. and also they're not so canon with the kind of music that they want to dance to. They will dance to pop music and kill it.
Do you find that lockers can be picky when it comes to music choices?
Yes, I've like had people tell me, why are you playing a popping song when I played a track, and it didn't make sense to me, because I think that lockers can dance to anything that's funky. And they can dance to pop music, they can dance to hip hop, they can dance as long as it's funky, as long as it's got those horns and those classic funky notes. Then I think that's all that matters for a locking battle.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the lockers dance to Swan Lake.
Well, there you go.
So, gives you an idea. Right on. Okay, guys, if you have questions, please ask them in the question box. Ruby Jane is here answering all your questions relating to DJing. I have an interesting question, because we see that, you know, now that we're at this period of, you know, being at home, I've seen that more dancers are becoming interested in getting into DJing or researching becoming a DJ. So if you could give maybe a couple pieces of advice, what would be some of the advice that you would give to maybe a dancer who's looking to get into pursuing DJing in some way?
It's hard for me to have advice, because they're going in with an advantage. They understand the culture, the dance culture. They probably understand the music more than I did going into it. So they're definitely at an advantage. The only thing I would advise them to do is to practice their mixing and their dance floor delivery. Don't just prepare tracks to quickly hit play for the battles. Like if you really want to get into DJing, you need to learn how to mix. You need to understand the how a song is structured, the phrasing of songs, you know, and learn how to mix without the sync button in your software.
This is a good thing. Now, you're saying mixing.
Yeah.
Maybe we can give a little example of what a mix is like, because people hear mixing and they think, is it scratching or what? What is it that you're trying to do when you're mixing two songs?
When I have one track playing in the house on the sound system and I'm about to play the next track, I do an overlap. People call it transitions too. That's another term that's kind of a newer term a lot of people say. Transitions. So it's as you've got the new track coming in, you've got the beats lined up so that they're beat matched. And sometimes the tracks might be faster, so you have to adjust the speed of them on the turntables or in your software or on your controller. And sometimes you have to do lots of little adjustments because you're playing a live song, so the drummer wasn't necessarily perfectly at the right speed, and so that's a little difficult with live music, or a recording of a live drummer as opposed to a drum machine, or just electronically produced drums on a track. Is sometimes the beat isn't consistent.
So my man Adrian Yoko from Singapore asked, what kind of transition do you use when you mix funk songs?
I tend to try and beat match. I kind of got into that's just general style of smoothing into the next one. Sometimes it just doesn't work and you gotta just drop it.
I would really love to see you give an example of a mixing of a song, and then maybe what you call a train wreck.
No.
I think it's good, because I think it's important for people to hear that as well too, you know.
I didn't know I was gonna have to actually DJ during this.
Come
Not even
on.
my headphones. Oh, Mark. Well, if there are other questions, let's answer those first. That James Brown song that I played it's pretty easy, because his band was always so tight, you know. He expected perfect timing from his musicians, so the drums are always very consistent and clean. So it's actually pretty easy to mix, because
Cat
so it's easier to mix the intro of a track.
Got to blow your mind. I remember long time ago. I remember long time ago. I went to you. Everybody, yeah. Woo. Say you was very slow, yeah. I done got hip to the jive. Give it up the streets. Taking 95. From the Bama.
There you go. See, there's a train wreck at the end. So it's so easy to train wreck with live music like that because the beats will switch up, and this is very multi-rhythmic, like a classic raw funk song.
Right. Very interesting. I gotta make a correction. My man Adrian Yoko's from Indonesia, not Singapore. So Indonesia's in the house today. Yes. All right. Okay. Yes, there's more questions coming in. That's very good.
I just lost
Do you feel like DJing for dance battles is an underappreciated portion of the dance culture?
Definitely, I don't think that the general dancer population understands how much work goes into it. And we're not paid very much. But you will spend I'll spend up to 10 hours researching, putting together the music. And it's not just like, oh, I have a list of music. I have planned out according to preliminaries, quarters, semifinals, because I don't want to blow my load and play all the best hype songs. I want to save those songs for the finals. Sometimes I want the final battle to have a surprise track that people are going to freak out about. Like the time I played Another One Bites the Dust for Whacking Battle. And I think it was Ruby in Toronto, Ruby Magnitude, who battled to that, and she was really impressed that I played it because she'd never expected it, but the crowd enjoyed it. So
Right.
So it really involves a lot of preparation, going over every song, making sure you know where you want to bring it in, and also strategically choosing which song to play when during which part of the whole battles. And at the same time, you're watching the dancers to make because sometimes it's one round each or 2 rounds each, and then sometimes the next team jumps in when you were supposed to drop the next track, and there's not a lot of communication between the actual dancers who are battling and the DJs. They need to understand that there's a structure. You're gonna play 2 songs, 1 song for the first round, 1 song for the next round.
Right.
And you need to wait until that next song comes in before you dive in. So
Do you think that what was I gonna ask? Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I still have another thing to add to that. It is somewhat underappreciated in the sense that they don't realize that we put in so much work. And unfortunately, dance battle organizers and promoters don't have a good budget all the time. We get a fair pay usually, and it's appreciated, but with that amount of work, it would be nice to get the kind of a corporate level type of pay,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we're doing it mostly for the love of the community. So, don't ask me to do it for free, but I always give a major discount because I know that the community doesn't have that kind of money to pay for that, for my work.
Right. And I mean, if you're gonna decide to do something for free, I think
it would be if it was a fundraiser for charity.
Right.
Yeah. Or if it was if they wanted me to just play in between the battles or at the after party and they really had no budget, then I would consider doing it for free. But the battle itself, it's a lot of work, and
Right.
I think that I deserve to be compensated for that.
Like any artist.
Yeah.
Right. Do you repeat songs for different battles? Like if you get invited to one battle and then you're playing a battle a bit after, do you use the same song sets? That do you find that do you become Like,
No.
or do you change it up? Do you always look for something new for each battle?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing in 2 different cities, then there'll be repetition because there's new dancers. But if I know that the same dancers who are at this one battle are going to be at the next one, then yes, I am going to switch it up. And I keep track of what I've played in the past. Especially, like, for example, Unlock the Funk, I did it twice or 3 times? Three times. So I kept my folder from last year and the year before and didn't make any repetitions.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting thing too, because you had mentioned it and it made me think of one of the first DJs I met in the dance scene in Toronto was DJ Son of Soul.
Yeah.
And this Masimba, he was a member of the Zulu Nation, but he lived in Toronto and he just had an incredible record collection. He was so knowledgeable about funk. He passed away in 2015 suddenly, but everybody who comes from Toronto, you know, loved and appreciated Son of Soul. But he was so awesome because he was all about challenging the dancers. He would play songs that dancers would never hear before, so that they would have to, like, number one, respond to it in a spontaneous way, but also get them to think about it and do research. And he loved it when a dancer would, yo, I haven't heard that song before. What is that? So what are your thoughts on, like, the whole idea of, like, challenging dancers with music they haven't heard before? Is that something you do all the time, or, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I like a balance between more recognizable tunes that will get people really excited because it's, like, possibly their favorite tune, not necessarily a specific person, but I'll be, you know, there's certain tunes that are hits within the dance world, classic tunes. So, but I almost approach it to the sense that I want those tunes to be almost like a surprise, because maybe they haven't heard it in a bit. But I want to challenge the dancers. It's really important for dancers to look beyond the battle world. Like, I think that everyone should consider themselves an artist who can create and not just, you know, compete. So dancers should be interested in working with all kinds of music, not just, you know, the canon, so to speak. And so it's a balance between, like, a track where people are like, whoa, I can't believe you played it, but it's awesome. Or then sometimes I'll play something and people are like, this isn't right. This is a popping track. Or, you know, oh, you were playing too much, like, boogie. We wanted, like, James Brown classic funk. And so it's finding a balance.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you find new music? Can you give some tips for music research?
Yeah. I mean, Spotify, I have to admit, is a pretty good tool for discovering new music. Or, you know, you look for one song on YouTube and there's a lot of suggested videos, so associated artists. So you just take your time, and that's how you can discover a lot of stuff. I'll listen to your release radar, Spotify, your made for you playlist. You're going to discover a lot of new stuff. And also listen to DJ mixes. People don't, ever since Spotify came in, people aren't listening to DJ mixes anymore. So they're starting to lose touch with what music sounds like without a like artificial algorithm. Because it's the human touch that brings those mixes together.
For sure. And
go back to SoundCloud, go back to Mixcloud. Go to radio shows, go to people's DJ mixes, and pay attention to what they're putting together.
We were listening last week to an awesome station on Mixcloud that focused all about soul, right? And they were from London.
Yeah, global soul, and not even modern soul, not modern soul, like R&B, modern R&B.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bagsy. I see him tuning in all the way from the UK. UK's in the house today. Right on. Yeah, I mean, the whole aspect of DJing, we all know a DJ because, you know, the records are iconic. So I guess the big question is it important for DJs to still collect records today?
I think collecting vinyl is a hobby that not everyone needs to do, personally. It's expensive, buying records. And if you don't have that within your means, then don't sweat it. I think it's would be really great if DJs did take the time to learn how to work with records, because it's so much more intuitive and physical. It's like it becomes like playing an instrument, rather than like producing beats in Ableton. You're like actually learning how to play the turntables like an instrument.
And you started with records, or did you start with Serato, working with?
No, with records. However, not too far after Serato came along in my life, but I guess it was in 2010 when I started with Serato.
So what was the biggest differences from learning with records and then transitioning to electronic?
Well, as you can see, I'm still using the turntables, so a lot of the like physical manipulations that I'm doing is the same, and when I find myself with a controller or CDJs, it doesn't come as naturally to me, and I will be more likely to train wreck, because you're adjusting the pitch. I have it might be a bad habit to some people, but I often adjust speed, tweak the speed by touching the edge of the platter or just doing a little bit of that. And that's how I learned with records, so I'm the most comfortable playing on turntables. But Serato opened up a huge world of new music and edits and remixes, and new songs that just never made it to vinyl. And it's important to have like a big repertoire of tunes, especially if you have a residency you play every week. The crowd don't want to hear the same songs every week, and when you have records, that's kind of what happens. Unless you have a giant record collection, and I have a sizable amount of records, but nothing compared to some people.
Here's an interesting question. Maybe to go back, tell us more about the journey when playing a DJ set, the artistry that goes through it. Do you have a base set to start off? How much improv intuition goes through it? And then do you start looking for a specific record in the middle of a set?
Usually, it depends on the gig. If I'm playing a big gig, like for example Footprints in Toronto, or like a festival, I was recently booked to play a Picnic, I will very likely put a set together where I plan each song in what order, and then every once in a while I'll think of a song in the middle of that set and say, hey, some of it, depending on the gig, if it's like a really important gig to me or it's going to be recorded, I will prepare something and stick to it most of the time, like 75%, with a lot of sort of added improv. But then I have like gigs and smaller bars, like Bar de Courcelles, which is one of my favorite places to play. I'm playing for 5 hours. I'm just gonna show up with all of my funk music and soul and disco and like a little bit of pop, and I'm gonna just play it how I feel and watch the crowd, and that's the journey. It's more of a meandering journey rather than an A to B,
right?
And
I think you develop your personality as a DJ through that as well too. I mean,
yeah,
you definitely have a sound that I think can associate with you. You know what I mean? Like and different DJs have different sounds that we tend to think of. Like when I hear Frank Boulevard, or if I hear Son of Soul, like they have their own special touch. Same with Majest as well. Like they'll have different ways of performing.
And usually, if I'm using usually I am always using Serato. You can see the tracks in terms of speed, so you can sort of sometimes I'll be like, I need to get to this speed, so I need to use a few tracks to get me there. It's almost like playing chess. Or I'm gonna switch up genres. I want to go into like new wave or Motown, and I need to find like, I'll be like thinking like 3 steps ahead what transition tracks I need to do to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you prefer longer sets or shorter sets?
I like in between. I like a good 2-hour set. I also love DJing with other DJs, and we switch up like every 45 minutes.
What's that called when you guys?
Sometimes some people call it tag teaming.
Okay.
Or me and Professor Groove play 3 for 3s or 5 for 5s, where each person plays 5 tracks and then we jump back and forth. and that's really fun.
Right.
Because you can socialize with your friends the whole time while you're DJing, rather than focusing on mixing the whole time. And it's more dynamic that way, and it's an opportunity to interact with your fellow DJs.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Is there a particular way you go about organizing tracks for parties and or battles?
Well, it's by genre. You know, I have a whacking folder, a locking folder, a b-boy folder, because they are quite distinct genres. I have a folder called Tonight, and it's like a folder that's constantly switching up to music I want to play that day.
Okay.
So it's not like specifically, probably not in an order specifically, but it's just like, oh, these are some new tracks I discovered. They're gonna get played tonight. You know. I have some playlists like from other previous events that I was like, I'm gonna hang on to that because it's gonna come in handy. Maybe if I'm gonna be in another city, I might sort of revisit that playlist again.
Right. Cool. Do you still spend a lot of time digging music, or is it like a rare moment now?
Digging for records, I'm assuming they mean, or like actual physical digging? Because the term digging tends to be used for records where you go to like a church basement and you're digging through all of these like dollar bin record.
This is an interesting story. Maybe regardless, just like explain that whole process of digging for records.
Okay. Well, going to a record store where the record store is like very well organized and by genre, it's not really digging, but like real digging in the sense of the word is like all those dollar bins at the bottom where nothing's organized and who knows what the hell you're gonna find down there, and it's a lot of it's stuff that's completely unknown, but you might listen to it and hear some kind of gem, and hopefully it's not all scratched. You get it for $1, but it could be worth like $300. That's digging. There was a few places that the local DJs kept secret in Montreal that were like on the outskirts of the city, and they would go digging and find the most incredible records.
So where were these secret, not names, but like you mentioned church basements, but where else would you see that people would have records that you could go and dig for?
They were just kind of like storage spaces that people would open up for local DJs to go in and dig through. And then there was another place like that. Sometimes it's like record stores that are just there. It's just like flea markets, garage sales. Not necessarily like a nicely curated record store, but more like a junky vintagey store that has all sorts of stuff. And then they're gonna have some record crates and 45s, and then nothing's organized. You have to dig through. And a lot of people would bring portable record players, ones that even operated on batteries so that they could listen to the track on site, because a lot of these places there was no opportunity for you to actually listen to the song.
So where are some of the most interesting places you've been digging, and what was like, if you could think of some of the gems that you found while digging?
It was really fun record shopping in Japan. However, I found that a lot of their records weren't in the greatest quality and they were kind of expensive, but we did go to this one place that was all Jamaican music. So I found some really nice lovers rock in very good condition at a very good price. There was this one spot that some of us would go to out in the suburbs, and it was the first I found that Gino Socio record, tried out. I didn't know anything about Gino Socio, but when I saw his name I was like, oh, it's probably disco, and I brought it home and I couldn't believe it. And he's this like long lost guy from Montreal. No one even knows where he ended up. There was a really cool article about him on Wax Poetics, but he made amazing disco. Which is a track that works for lockers and whackers. Here, let me play it. So that was like a cool find. I mean, that record wasn't rare. I've seen it a million times since, but it was a cool experience for me to be like, what the hell is this? And I didn't even listen to it. I just brought it home, and it was just a crazy find.
I feel the one time we were traveling, we went to that record store in New Orleans was really cool too.
Yeah, that was my next one. I found some nice 45s, soul, and we went to another spot that was like, they had a lot of reggae, so I found some nice reggae records.
Good questions, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys participating in this. And
So this is the Geno Socio record. I have the 45, but I don't know exactly where it is, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to dig it out. My records are not that organized.
maybe we'll talk about that after.
This is a classic. I'll skip it ahead. So yeah.
It's disco, but damn, it's funky too,
Yeah,
right?
'cause it's got those horns.
And the bass.
Yeah. Disco is funk. Disco comes out of the funk tradition. It's just like the auntie-uncle, the cousins of funk. Like, it's just more orchestral.
More polished too, I
More
would say.
polished, more orchestral, just less raw.
Right. So let's talk about your record collection a bit, like, because you say, I think it's interesting, and I've seen people talk about how they organize their records. Do you have a way in which your records are organized?
Well, you can't really see my shelf. You can't see my shelf all the way over there. But I have a lot of 45s, and they're just like in these bins that are about this wide.
What's a 45?
A 45 is the small records
Why is it called a 45?
because it rotates at 45 rotations per minute. RPM is the term. This is 30, like a regular record, a 12-inch record rotates at 33.
Okay.
So they're called 45. Some people call them 7 inches because they're actually 7 inches. So I have I don't know, like 6 bins of those, and they were organized roughly by genre. Like, before we moved, I had somewhat organized them, but you're pulling out so many records at a time that they sort of get put back wrong. But then these are all like kind of like my hip hop and 80s and 90s pop and stuff. But over on that shelf, it's everything that I consider like funk, jazz, boogie, disco.
Is it alphabetized? Do you alphabetize
Yeah,
it?
it's roughly alphabetized. Sometimes the B's just are sort of mixed up, but they're still in the B's. Yeah.
Do the records you have stories associated with them? Like, do they have personal stories attached to them, or?
The ones that, to me, sort of have stories are the ones that when I was playing records exclusively are the ones that I played like to shit. Like, I played them so much that the sleeve's falling apart and there's weird scratches on it, and I kind of like holding this and being like, this is the one record I played a bajillion times when I first started DJing.
So, I mean, it's kind of a common question that everybody asks, but do you have a favorite record in your collection? Or is there one that, like you said, you played so much that it's kind of...
I really love this 45 that I have by Anne Sexton. Anne Sexton, You're Losing Me. I didn't dig for it. It didn't like fall into my lap in some random dollar bin. Like, I found it on the internet and ordered it, but it just sounds so good and so rich. And it's one of my favorite songs. And I have to say that's probably one of my favorite records. Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, I think it's interesting too because, you know, records, they all have some sort of meaning in some way, or there's always a story behind it, you know, or it makes you think about a certain time.
And it's kind of nice because when you're with other DJs or with like just people who are interested, they come over to the DJ booth. What are you playing? You can just show them the record sleeve, you know?
There was a time where DJs weren't telling people the songs that they were playing.
Well,
did you ever experience that? Or how did DJs hide the music at that point?
People put stickers on top of the labels of the records, but I always found that a little obsessive. Like, maybe you live in a really competitive city and people just want to keep all their secrets to themselves, but I never was like that. Yeah.
It's hard to do that now, I mean.
There was even DJs, when Serato first came out, you could hide your library, so you might have the songs in the smaller text, but on the top where you see it in big letters, it would be blanked out.
How do you handle when somebody tries to make requests?
I'm polite. Did someone ask that question?
No, I'm asking this one. It's an interesting one.
They'll come by to the booth, and if I'm in the middle of a mix, I'm gonna be like, just a minute, or ignore them until I'm ready to talk, because sometimes I'm in the middle of something. And I'll be like, hey, how are you? And then they'll be like, do you take requests? And I'm like, it depends. Like, I mean, it depends if it works with what I'm playing, for sure I'll play it. And then, they'll ask me, do you take requests? I'll be like, it depends. But sometimes if I'm doing a theme night, or like a gig where I was like the headliner and I've been booked, because of my own tastes and my own expertise, I won't take requests. But if I'm playing in a small bar and I'm going to be there for 5 hours and, someone requests something reasonable and fun and I'll be happy to play it, I'll play it.
So can you play some Britney Spears?
Can I play? No. I don't think so. I'm like, I guess Toxic is kind of a cool song, but I have a cover of it that I'd rather play.
If you find like a Lovers Rock version of it or something?
Yeah, Mark Ronson has like an instrumental version of it. Or not even...
what do you think of people not coming up to you asking song names and just watching your screen, or like trying to Shazam?
Oh, I don't care if people Shazam, but I don't like it when people are hovering behind me. One of my pet peeves is when people are like, can you explain how this works? Or can you show me how to DJ?
They do that live?
Yeah, I've had okay, it's two types of people in general. It's usually girls who are like, can you give me a little tutorial right now? And I'm like, I'm working. And even though it might be like I'm having fun and I'm relaxing, I'm still working. Right. I have to pay attention. I'm not here to give you a tutorial. Go onto YouTube and get a video tutorial. Right. So often it's women who'll ask me that. And then there's dudes who'll be like, I'm also a DJ, mind if I jump on for a bit? And I'll be like, no, never in the 20 years that I've been DJing have I ever done that. I would never go over to someone and say, like, can I jump on?
So people tried to like interrupt your set while you were playing?
Because they want to get on the turntables even though I don't know this person. It's different if it's like someone I know who rolled in from out of town and they're just coming from another gig and they have their gear or their records or whatever. I'll be like, yeah, sure, get on for a half hour. But obviously not if it's a stranger who wants to use my computer and
right.
Yeah.
Can you maybe share a bit of your experiences as a woman in the DJ scene? Because this is we see a lot of guy DJs, but how is it being a woman dealing with the scene?
I haven't come up against any real issues or tensions because of my gender. I do think that sometimes I get opportunities because I'm a female and I'm like identifying female, cisgender female, and they want to represent diversity in their event. So yeah, sometimes it's like preferential treatment because I'm a woman, but generally speaking, I don't think that's why I get booked. I've even asked, like, when people have asked me to play for certain events, I've been like, did you book me because I was like the token female? And they're like, no, not at all. And I remember being like, are you sure? Because I felt like I was brought on as a token female. I have in the past experienced bully DJs who sort of dive in onto my set and cut my set short because they want to start DJing, and they would never do that to a man. They would never like bogart the turntables if it was a guy who was playing or was about to play. And maybe that's just my opinion. It is my opinion, but I do think that I have experienced like bullying on occasion from male DJs in a way that they would never treat a man like that.
Right.
But that was only a couple of times.
But I think it's important to talk about and be aware. There are challenges that come with it. So, and I have to say, I do feel a certain kindred with other female DJs because there's not a lot of women in the music industry and the DJ industry, and it's not so much that I'm like, hey, women unite, we're powerful. It's just like we often, and I'm generalizing here and maybe creating like, you know, gender normative assumptions, but I feel like female identifying DJs have like an approach and a certain taste in music that resembles mine more than a man sometimes. Like often, you know, you say that I have a sound. Ruby Jane has a sound, and I think that sound comes from the fact that I'm female, you know. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Shout out to Iced Misto, who's tuning in. She's representing Toronto, dope DJ from out in TO. Well, we're getting close. We've been on for an hour. I don't know if anybody has any more questions. If you guys have any more questions, maybe, you know, get it in for the last couple of minutes. But in the meantime, where can people find you? Where can we hear your mixes? Where can we tune in if you're going live?
If you go to WeFunk Radio and you go to the search bar, just put in Ruby Jane and you'll see all the shows I've been in. And it's not just me. There's also every show features a mix by Static and Professor Groove, and you know, it's fun to hear the chat at the beginning, at the end of the tracks, and the music goes so deep. You'll find some of my mixes on Mixcloud as well, DJ Ruby Jane. I've been streaming on Twitch, so that's as well. DJ Ruby Jane is the name of my account on Twitch. Instagram, it's always fun, DJ Ruby Jane. I used to post a lot of food on that one until someone said you should start a food account. So if you're into food, my food account is Yumtown City.
Yeah, so for if you Ruby's also an amazing cook.
It's like my main hobby. I think I might be more passionate about food than music.
Uh-oh. But I think they go hand in hand too, right?
I can give some advice as a DJ to organizers.
Go ahead.
I find often when I'm booked to DJ, it's so last minute for them to get organized with the sound equipment. Immediately I'm like, what's the gear setup going to be like? Who can I communicate with? Can we figure this out? And often it's so unorganized that I show up and there's nothing I can work with. Even though I've requested certain gear, or, you know, I could have brought stuff if you figured this out beforehand. So as soon as you book a DJ, ask them for their technical writer. A writer is the list of the gear that the DJ would like to have. If you need to negotiate with them to bring gear, then you figure that out way ahead of time. It's really important for all the event DJs to communicate so we can figure out who can work with each other's gear, so that there's not this giant mishmash setup. We can have it nice and streamlined and organized. If you don't want to organize this, you know, get your sound tech. If you have a sound tech, get that person in touch with all the DJs. We can organize it amongst ourselves, but get us organized that way. And finally, the most important thing is if you have judges or showcase dancers who are gonna do a demo, a showcase, get the music to the DJs at least 24 hours in advance. I don't know how many times I've had to chase after dancers for their music, and then they show up with their phone and want to play their phone, and I don't have the right cable, even though I told you to email me the track. if you can tell me, give me your song 48 hours in advance, I'll have it. And if I can't find it on the internet, or I can't find the version you want, then you email it to me, and then I have it, and it's all nice and organized, and it's ready to go, and there's no like, oh, that's not the right track, why are you playing that? And it gets embarrassing for all of us. So.
And I think that's the organizers. So organizers, if you're doing events, take notes, listen to your DJs, communicate with your DJs, and work with the judges as well to make sure that you get that info in, because it's just going to help your event run that much more smoothly.
It's not enough to just say, okay, we booked a DJ, that's it. You need to organize the DJ setup, the booth setup.
Right.
Or figure out how to get all the DJs to communicate with each other to see who's going to bring what and all that.
Good words from somebody who's been in the trenches and knows what it's like. One last question here. Do you have a favorite mixer?
Oh, I guess I really like the Pioneer Nexus, the 900, I think it's called, because it has I just love the filter button. I don't use a lot of the extra effects on mixers. The Pioneer S9 that has the Serato built in is fun too, because there's the buttons for the cue points, the same cue points that you would find in Serato, so that's kind of nice to have it right under your fingers instead of having to use your laptop. I have this little Rain Empath. It's like a little analog mixer that I've been super happy with because it has multiple inputs. It takes XLR, 1/4 inch, a mic, as well as RCA aux in, so no matter where I show up, I can always patch in either with XLR. I bring quarter adapters for RCA cables. Like, I have multiple ways of getting my mixer hooked up to a soundboard.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 2 minutes left, so I want to thank Ruby Jane for doing this for everybody. I'll put these videos up on my account soon. If you have anything left to say it now.
I have to say that I really admire the work that dancers put in to their craft, especially people who are battling. It takes a lot of dedication, and which is something I don't always have as a DJ. Like, I've always treated it more as a hobby. So watching people battle and seeing them improve over the years, and seeing them succeed, and even if you just make it to the semis, sometimes I see that you've danced better than you ever have. Like, that is the most thrilling thing for me, DJing battles. And like I said, it's hard work for me, but the fulfillment is to see how people are taking what I'm giving them and they're incorporating it into their art. And that's so much fun. And that's why I like to do battles.
Cool. All right, y'all. Well, I think that was a fun little video to do, something different. I've been interviewing lockers, but I think it was nice to get a different perspective on it. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Have yourselves a good weekend. Enjoy the weather out if the weather's nice where you're at. And hopefully we'll be back soon in 2 weeks to do another AMA. I'm Scramblelock, representing Lock for Life worldwide. Lock Unity here in Montreal. Peace out, y'all. Have a good time. Have a good weekend. And keep it funky. Keep listening to good music. All right? We'll talk soon. Peace. Say bye.